My husband humiliated me in front of his entire family. What my daughter said next made him pale. I am Lila, 34 years old, and I am standing in my mother-in-law's kitchen on Christmas Eve preparing dinner for 22 people. 11 years of marriage. I thought I knew my husband. I thought his family had finally accepted me. But some things stay hidden for years, waiting for the perfect moment to surface. That Christmas night changed everything. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If stories about strength and standing up for yourself resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Have you ever thought you knew someone completely only to discover you were entirely wrong? Stay with me, because what happened next still gives me chills. I need to take you back to the beginning, so you understand how I ended up in that kitchen cooking for people who never truly saw me as one of their own. I work as a nurse at a community hospital in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. Night shifts mostly. The kind of work that leaves you exhausted but somehow fulfilled. I spend my nights caring for elderly patients responding to emergencies at 2 a.m, holding the hands of people who are scared and alone. It is not glamorous work. The pay is decent, but nothing extraordinary. But every single day I know I am making a difference in someone's life, and that has always been enough for me. I grew up in a small town in Iowa. My father was a carpenter who built furniture with his hands pieces that families would keep for generations. My mother taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school for 32 years before she retired. They raised me to believe in hard work and kindness, in treating every person with dignity, regardless of their bank account or job title. I was their only child, and they poured everything they had into making sure I had opportunities they never did. That upbringing shaped who I am. I learned to be patient because my father spent hours perfecting every joint and corner of his work. I learned to be nurturing because my mother treated every student like her own child. I learned humility because in our house, bragging was considered poor manners. These values carried me through nursing school, through the grueling first years of my career, through every challenge life threw at me. When I met Derek Harrison, I thought I had found someone who appreciated those qualities. It was 12 years ago at a coffee shop in downtown Denver. I had just finished a particularly brutal overnight shift, and I was sitting at a corner table with dark circles under my eyes, nursing a large coffee, like it was the only thing keeping me alive. He walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, looking like he had stepped out of a magazine. He was confident, charming, the kind of man who seemed to own every room he entered. Derek was an architect at his family's company, Harrison Development. They designed and built luxury homes and commercial buildings throughout Colorado. His father had started the company 40 years ago, and Derek was being groomed to eventually take over. He represented everything that was different from my simple Iowa upbringing. Money, status, connections, ambition. But in those early days, he made me feel like none of that mattered. He started leaving handwritten notes under the windshield wiper of my car. He would show up at the hospital with flowers at the end of my shifts, not caring that he had to wake up at 6 a.m. to catch me. Once he drove 2 hours just to take me to dinner at a restaurant he had heard about, then drove 2 hours back so I could make my next shift. He told me I was different from the women in his social circle. He said I was real genuine, that I cared about things that actually mattered. I fell for him completely. We got engaged after a year of dating. The proposal was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Denver skyline, with a string quartet playing in the background and 200 rose petals scattered across our private balcony. It was the most extravagant thing I had ever experienced. I said yes, without hesitation. The wedding was held at the Harrison family estate. 300 guests, most of whom I had never met. A designer gown that cost more than my annual salary at the time. Flowers imported from Holland. A 7-tier cake that I was afraid to cut because it looked more like a sculpture than food. It was Patricia Harrison's production from start to finish. My parents sat in the front row, looking slightly overwhelmed but proud. I told myself it did not matter that the wedding felt more like a Harrison Company event than a celebration of our love. What mattered was that Derek and I were starting our life together. That brings me to his family, Gerald Harrison. My father-in-law is 68 years old. He built Harrison Development from nothing, starting with a small construction crew and a single contract to build a strip mall. 40 years later, the company is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Gerald is a man of few words. He observes more than he speaks, and when he does talk, everyone listens. I have always found him intimidating, but not unkind. He never went out of his way to make me feel unwelcome, but he never went out of his way to make me feel welcome either. Patricia Harrison is 65, and she is the opposite of her husband in every way. Where Gerald is quiet, Patricia is constantly talking. Where Gerald seems indifferent to social status, Patricia is obsessed with it. She chairs multiple charity boards, organizes galas and fundraisers, and makes sure the Harrison name appears in the society pages regularly. From the moment I met her, I could sense her measuring me against some invisible standard that I would never quite meet. Derek has 2 younger siblings. Brooke is 31, unmarried, and works in the fashion industry in New York. She flies back to Denver for holidays and family events, always dressed impeccably, always with a new designer bag or pair of shoes to show off. Brooke has a talent for making compliments feel like insults. She will tell you how brave you are for wearing something, or how she could never work such long hours for such little pay. Everything she says has a sharp edge hidden beneath a sweet smile. Tyler is 29 and recently married to Megan, who is 28. They are the golden couple of the Harrison family. Tyler works alongside Derek at the company, and Megan is a marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company. They vacation in Europe twice a year, just bought a house in the most expensive neighborhood in Denver, and are constantly photographed at charity events looking like they belong on the cover of a magazine. Where do I fit into this family? I have spent 11 years trying to answer that question. At family dinners, I often find myself sitting quietly while the Harrisons discuss business deals and investment portfolios and social events I was not invited to. Patricia asks me regularly when I plan to quit my job and stay home with Emma full-time. She says it with a smile, as if she is being helpful, but I hear the criticism underneath. To her, my career is an embarrassment proof that Derek married beneath him. I have tried to prove my worth in other ways. I volunteer to cook for family gatherings. I remember every birthday, every anniversary, every preference and allergy. I send thank you notes after every event, bring thoughtful gifts, offer to help with anything Patricia needs. For 11 years I have been auditioning for acceptance that never quite comes, but I kept trying. I told myself that eventually they would see me for who I am, that patience and kindness would win them over. I was so naive. I need to tell you about Emma because without understanding her, you cannot understand what happened on that Christmas night. Emma is 10 years old, and she is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. She came into this world on a freezing February morning after 18 hours of labor. When the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, she looked up at me with these enormous blue eyes, and I felt something shift inside me. It was like my heart expanded to make room for a love so overwhelming it almost hurt. In that moment, I understood what it meant to have someone you would die for without a second thought. Emma has my curly brown hair, the kind that refuses to be tamed no matter how much product you use. But she has Derek's striking blue eyes, pale and bright like a winter